I have a confession to make. For a long time, I used to believe that people who talked about burnout or limits were just weak. I'm not proud of that, but it's the honest truth. In my mind, strength meant pushing harder, sleeping less, and ignoring any kind of discomfort. It was about proving to myself, more than anyone else, that I could handle absolutely anything that came my way. I genuinely believed my body and mind were like machines that would just keep running as long as my ambition was strong enough. Looking back on that now, that belief feels incredibly dangerous, but back then it felt empowering. My days were completely packed. Work, responsibilities, expectations, it all just blended together into one long continuous stretch of pressure. I would wake up tired and go to bed even more exhausted, telling myself it was only temporary. Just a few more months, I'd say to myself. Once things finally settle down, I'll rest. But that promise became a habit, a cycle. Every single time my body pleaded for a break, I postponed it. Every warning sign, every ache and pain felt small enough to ignore. A headache here, a racing heart there, sleepless nights, mood swings. I told myself, this is the price of success. It's funny, the people around me noticed the changes long before I did. My friends would joke that I looked completely drained. My family members would ask why I was always so irritable or distant, and I just brushed it all off with a smile. In my head, they just didn't understand what real pressure was. They didn't understand ambition. I thought advice was easy to give when you weren't the one carrying all the weight. What I didn't realize was that they weren't judging my effort, they were worried about my direction. Then one evening, after a particularly long and brutal day, I ran into an older man near my workplace. He wasn't someone I knew well at all. Just a familiar face I'd seen around the area. He looked at me quietly for a moment, almost as if he was deciding whether he should say something. And then he did, calmly, softly. It was almost like an afterthought. He said, "You're pushing too hard. If you don't slow down now, your body will force you to later." That was it. There was no lecture, no dramatic tone, just that one single sentence. I smiled politely and nodded, you know, the way you do when you just want to end a conversation. Inside, I dismissed it immediately. It sounded like the kind of generic advice people give when they get older and forget what it is like to really chase your goals. I thought, he means well, but he doesn't know me. I walked away feeling a little annoyed, not concerned. And that sentence disappeared from my mind just as quickly as it had entered. The weeks that followed were even worse. The pressure at work just kept increasing. The expectations grew heavier. I started relying on caffeine just to function. Sleep became optional. Meals were either rushed or skipped entirely. Even when I tried to sit still, my mind refused to rest. And a strange thing happened. I felt proud of how much I could endure. There was this weird satisfaction in surviving pure exhaustion. It made me feel important, needed. It made me feel strong. But my body was keeping score. One morning, I woke up feeling different. Not just tired heavy. My chest felt tight, like something was sitting on it. My head felt light, and my heartbeat was so loud in my ears. I stood up and felt a wave of dizziness, but I ignored it. I always did. I told myself I'd be fine once I got moving. That was my solution to everything. Just keep moving. While I was driving, my hands started trembling slightly. My breathing felt shallow. I tried to take a deep breath, but it didn't feel like enough air was getting in. Panic crept in quietly at first, and then suddenly it just took over everything. My heart started racing uncontrollably. And this wasn't the normal fast beat you get from stress. This was different. This felt wrong. I pulled over to the side of the road, my vision blurring, my thoughts just racing in circles. For the first time in years, I felt powerless. Truly powerless. I wasn't thinking about my goals anymore. I wasn't thinking about work. I was thinking one thing, and one thing only. I don't want to die like this. As I sat there in my car, struggling to breathe, one sentence rose up from the back of my mind with terrifying clarity. If you don't slow down now, your body will force you to later. The man's voice came back to me, exactly as he had said it. Calm, certain, not angry, not dramatic. Just true. In that moment, I finally understood something that I had been avoiding for years. My body wasn't betraying me. It was protecting itself. It was doing the one thing that I had refused to do. It was stopping. I don't know how long I sat there on the side of the road. Minutes felt like hours. Eventually, my breathing started to slow down, and the intensity of the panic eased, but the fear didn't go away. Something inside of me had shifted. I drove home slowly, not feeling relieved, just feeling shaken. That ironclad confidence I once had was completely gone, replaced by this quiet, heavy realization that I was not invincible. Recovery didn't happen overnight. It wasn't some dramatic, movie-like transformation. It was uncomfortable. It was awkward. I had to face the fact that I had ignored every single sign, every warning, every piece of advice that didn't match my ego. I had to accept that slowing down didn't mean failing. It meant surviving. So I started making changes that once felt impossible. I rested without feeling guilty. I started saying no without feeling like I had to explain myself. I started to listen to my body, to the people who cared about me, to the warnings I had once brushed aside so easily. Life didn't magically become easy. The pressure didn't just disappear. But I learned how to live inside of it without completely destroying myself. That simple piece of advice, the one I almost ignored, it saved my life. Not because it was clever or motivational, but because it was honest. Most life-saving advice doesn't sound exciting. It sounds ordinary. And I think that's why we ignore it. We think wisdom should shout, when most of the time, it just whispers. The biggest lesson I learned from all of this is this. Strength isn't about how much pain you can tolerate. It's about knowing when to stop before the damage becomes permanent. Listening doesn't make you weak. It makes you aware. And that awareness can literally save your life. I often think about how close I came to learning this lesson the hard way. How easily that day on the side of the road could have ended differently. And I think about how many people right now are living the exact same way I did, tired, pressured, ignoring the signs, and promising themselves that they'll rest later. If you are one of them, please hear this as someone who has been there. Slow down. Pay attention. Respect your limits. Not tomorrow. Not later. Now. Because sometimes one small piece of advice, said quietly, almost casually, is the difference between a warning and a regret. And if this story made you pause, even for just a moment, please consider sharing it with someone you care about. They might need to hear it before their body forces them to stop. Thank you for listening.